Waushara Community Church presents the Mixing Bowl Podcast. This is the Mixing Bowl Podcast, and you're joining us for Season 3, Episode 25. 25, that's a lot. That's pretty awesome. In this season, we have been tackling the big question of what is the church? It's a big question and an important question. And from the moment we see in Scripture that we're called to be a regular and engaged part of the body of Christ, we begin this journey of answering a whole bunch of questions. Like, where should I go? What should I care about? What does Scripture really say about the body of Christ? Should I become a member? Should I find a place to serve in? Or even, hey, I've been here for 40 plus years, and that's crazy to think about every time I say this the last 5 episodes, but how should I be still engaging? Why should I still be engaging? And even more questions. But today we're going to try and wrap all of these things up with a nice bow. And so we're tackling what is our core calling. And so as we kind of walk into that, we want to recap some of the things that we've talked about that all point to this mission that Christ has given us. And so just so you can remember, if you want to go back and look them up, we started with what is the church, what to look for in a church, what is church membership, why serve, and now discipleship is our core calling.
Yeah, I think it is without a doubt the message to the church from Jesus as he ended his ministry, go and make disciples. That's what I think we conflate that with a lot of different things and what discipleship really is.
Yeah.
And say, oh, we have to do XYZ program, this program, we have to make sure we're doing this or whatever. That's not necessarily discipleship. I'm not saying it's not.
Yeah.
Because I think there's hints of discipleship and all of that. But I think that's the core statement we have to understand is that we are called by Christ himself to go into all of the world and make disciples.
Yeah.
Go is a key essential word there. But I think that's the conversation today is, hey, how do we, as part of the church, because that's an important piece of discipleship, how do we go and make disciples, and what does that look like? And so that's what we want to kind of discuss today.
Yeah, and I'm really thankful that as we have talked about all these things that we were pointed to do, that we're not left without examples or instruction for each of these things. So that's really great. And as we step into this next talking point, right, you put to show that discipleship begins with imitation of Christ. So we have a set example, yep, and then we walk after that example.
Yeah, I think we think about discipleship. I think there's, you could probably go online and say, like, hey, I need a discipleship program and get hundreds.
Sure.
If not, I would guess thousands. Like, right, every church has probably at some point created one, and theirs has probably worked because God has been present in the midst of it. Mm-hmm. And they're like, hey, do this because it worked for us. And that might not work for you, right? I took an opportunity to be part of something that worked at another church, and someone was like, I came in to serve at a church, and they were like, hey, we want you to do this as part of our discipleship program. And so I read all of their stuff and was like, okay, here's what we're going to implement it. And it worked a little, but it was not the fit for our church. Like, it just didn't fit for our church. And so, those programs can be phenomenal tools that God uses.
Yeah.
No matter what you do as a church, if you create a system, right, it's a program. Yeah. You can argue that it's not like, oh, we're, really natural here in our disciples. Yeah, you're naturally creating programs. That's just, it's become part of your lifeblood, so it looks and feels natural. But discipleship really boils down to, okay, I see Christ, and I see all that he is doing. I need to be like that. And so, so good. When you talk about Paul is like, hey, I'm imitating Christ, so imitate me. Yeah. So that's the pattern and process, is a more mature believer who has walked through those things, who has grown in imitating Christ, is now showing you how they imitate Christ, right? Not showing you all the skill sets they have and all the abilities they have. You think about it this way, to imitate Christ, and this is Discipleship 101 in my book. This is the simplest form. This is what it should look like. Christ, when he is training the disciples, he gathers them together, okay, calls them, goes, hey, I want you to come follow me. He tells them, hey, this is what it looks like to follow me. And then he sends them out. And the first time he sends them out, he goes with them. He says, I want you to go do this. I want you to go practice this. Then they come back and they discuss it. Okay, what worked, what didn't work, what happened. Then he sends them out again. There's more training, more conversations about God and his word and what it means to live this way, right? And then he sends them out on their own. And they come back and there's more training.
Yeah.
And it says, and then eventually Christ says, okay, you're good because you have me forever. Go do this. And then that's when Christ, right, leaves. And so there is this idea in our minds. I think that like discipleship is like, oh, I got to train them to understand all of what Scripture says. That is a piece and component of discipleship. It is imitating what Christ has done for us, and then living that out in a way that shows that to the next person. Not next generation, because sometimes discipleship happens where you're 30 and you have been serving the Lord so well that you're discipling someone that's 60 because they are new to the faith or they haven't never been discipled in their life, and what that looks like. I really love this quote. J.T. English he's a pastor. I think he's still a pastor. He's kind of like a theologian, modern theologian. He wrote the book Deep Discipleship. The goal of discipleship, he says, isn't to be known by the church, but to know God deeply. Like that's the goal of discipleship, is that it's not to know all the practices and ideas that the church has. It's to say, hey, this is who God is and how he loves you and how you can serve him. Yeah. And so that imitation of Jesus is exactly that, right? Jesus came to glorify the Father. And so us imitating Jesus means that we are living our lives in a way that glorify God. And so it doesn't have to be this complicated system.
Yeah.
I think Paul gives us a very good system when he's talking to Timothy. And that's what it has to be. Okay, I'm looking at Jesus. I want to imitate Jesus. And then I want to show people how to imitate Jesus. That's the core. We're going to be an apprentice to Christ. And then we can extend it from that. Okay, how do we work out from there what to do? But that's the thrust of what discipleship is. Be like Jesus.
Yeah.
Follow what he says. Do what he says. Act like him. And if you're not acting like Jesus, okay, that's the process, right?
Yeah. So what does that rhythm look like in a simplistic manner?
Yeah, I think you see that in Paul when he talks to Timothy and he says, and what you have heard from me in the presence of many witnesses, entrust to faithful men who will be able to teach others also. So 4 generations, right? This is Paul. Okay, you can argue 5. I usually argue 3. The way I usually tell people is 3. But you have Paul, who has learned from Jesus, who's teaching Timothy. Okay, so Jesus to Paul to Timothy to faithful men to others.
Yeah.
So the way I try to explain it is usually I tell people 3 generations, right? Your Timothy. That's just look at discipleship as your Timothy. You want a Paul, and you want faithful men or women, right? Paul is not generalizing this to say that only men can do discipleship. I want to make that clear. So there, you should have, and it's very simply, right? You should have someone in your life who is discipling you.
Yeah.
Because, and maybe it's not like we're not talking whole life discipleship. Maybe it's about one specific thing. Hey, I'm not great. I feel like God has called me into serving in this area. I need to be discipled to grow closer to Jesus so that I can serve in this area, because I don't know. And so I go find someone who has served in that area, who deeply loves Jesus, and I can connect with them and say, okay, can you navigate this with me? Imitate Christ for me in this setting. Evangelism is probably a big one that like people need help. Evangelism is a spiritual gift, but we're also called to all go make disciples.
Yeah.
those aren't necessarily the same thing. I want to be clear, right? That's a different. Going and make disciples doesn't mean necessarily that you're evangelizing.
Yeah.
But they usually come pretty hand in hand, especially early on in kind of those journeys. And so, but there are two different things. And so maybe you say, I'm not good at going and having those conversations with people. I'm not good about talking with my neighbor. I used to do this with my youth kids. I would go places like I need to run church errands, especially in the summer.
Yeah.
It didn't always work during the school year. Homeschool kids, you could do it with. But I'd be like, hey, I need to run into the city.
Yeah.
I need to do all the shopping. And so I would say, hey, why don't you guys come with me? And then we would use that time to talk about, hey, this is what we're doing in the ministry. This is why we're doing it. How's life going? It's that interactive moment where Jesus knew the disciples well. And so in his discipleship of them, granted, he's God, right? So we're going to have to work harder at it. But he knew them and knew their strengths and their weaknesses, and he knew where to push on them and have conversations with them. And so every time you see Jesus like correcting or re-engaging or moving a disciple, he's doing that for the purpose of them growing deeper with God.
Yeah.
And so that's what we see kind of as the blueprint for, hey, this is what discipleship looks like. It is a, you can argue Scripture, I think, just says 4 generations, right? Paul, Timothy, faithful men, others. Yeah. You can argue 5 generations. I would say we need 3 generations, because if there's always 3 generations, you're always replicating.
Yeah.
Multiplication doesn't look like this is old, like it was probably the 90s, maybe the early 2000s of like this really big push for multiplication. And it's like if you go disciple 2 guys and they go disciple 2 guys and they that's beautiful math. The problem with that is if we actually did that, we'd have discipled everyone by now. The multiplication for that we'd be done.
Right.
The problem is discipleship often looks like one guy is discipling one guy, and then that guy's discipling another guy, but then that guy is also discipling another guy, but they're all both discipling that one guy. And so like the wonkiness of that gets tricky. So that don't think of multiplication that way. Yeah. Think of multiplication in the active will of God to say, I'm going to share God's truth, his word. Right, studying the Bible together is a big part of discipleship. Praying together is a big part of discipleship. Doing life together is a big part of discipleship. So I'm going to do those things with as many people as God calls me to do. Because, as a parent, your number one role you are the number one discipler of your children.
Yeah.
Not the church.
Yeah.
If that's a shock to you, I'm sorry. Our goal here is to say, hey, how can we help you disciple your children? Not how can we disciple your children? Yeah. We understand that there are going to be. I was one of those youth kids, right? That parents weren't with me at church.
Yeah, me too.
Great. I was glad that the church discipled me. I went to discipleship training and leadership training as a kid, like as a youth student, and I am so grateful for those things. But I would have been probably better off earlier on, right, if my parents were actively engaged in that.
Sure.
And so that is something to consider, right, as part of discipleship. You are the Paul to their Timothy. And so if, we see this transformation, and I'm going to go back to JT English. This is a great, fantastic book. You can come borrow it from me. I'd recommend buying it. But he says that discipleship happens in 3 intentional environments: knowing, being, and doing, where believers grow in their understanding of God, are shaped in Christ-like character, and live out their faith through obedient action. When the church integrates all 3, it forms whole disciples who not only know the truth, but embody and multiply it to the world. So it takes the knowledge of Scripture, because this is what discipleship in the 70s, 60s, 50s, 80s was like. You need to know the Word so well that I agree. You should know the Word really well. But you should also allow that to seep in. If God's not changing you and transforming you by the reading of his word, you're probably just reading it. And so when that happens and you're transformed by it, then you can go actively live it out and move through it. And so that would be the question, right? Who is your Paul? Do you have a Paul? And you might have 5 Pauls.
Yeah.
That's great. I mean, I have multiple men in my life who speak into my life. Who anytime I can text, call, write, and say, and they will give me insight. They are. I want to encourage this because this is an important piece. They are men who will look at me and say, "Stephen, you're wrong." This is an important piece about this. Paul would not hesitate to tell Timothy the truth in grace. Sometimes grace might be the slap in the back of the head, but in grace, and so, but you do not want sounding boards or echo chambers for your discipleship mentors.
Yeah.
You want a man or a woman, depending on your gender, right, who is going to speak truth to you in love.
Yeah.
And they are unashamed, unabashed to say, listen, Stephen, you're doing it wrong. And sometimes, they will be encouraging to you and say, no, this is right. But they might help you reform how you go pursue that then of like, hey, you got to check your heart in this. Like, he's like, I've had times where I've talked to them and they've been like, listen, you're right, but the way you're talking about it doesn't feel loving. Yeah. Right. And so how do you then address that? And so who's discipling you?
Yeah.
Okay. Or whom, like many people. And then who are you discipling? And here's a kind of follow-up question to that. As you're discipling someone, because this is one of the tricky things. It's something that, our discipleship facilitators are kind of doing, where they're like, who in my group can also facilitate?
Yeah.
Hey, I can't be there. Could you facilitate? Not lead, right? We're not having leaders in our discipleship groups. But and other people are stepping up. That's a way to say, hey, listen, go now. You go do. You've seen. You've been taught. You've lived it. Jesus is present in your life. Now go do this. And so that as you're discipling someone, who is your Timothy, and as you're training your Timothy, you're looking at your Timothy and going, hey, who's your Timothy?
Yeah.
And the cool thing about that is it can be done. You might go, man, how do I do that? I'm like training my 13-year-old. We're walking in discipleship. How can they have a Timothy? Well, they can show up to church on Sunday and serve. Yeah. They can show up to Sunday and serve other students. They can show up and serve other adults. They can look and say, hey, my faith with Jesus is really strong in this area. I can help others see that, not as a glorify me moment,
right,
but as a, hey, I want you to see what God has transformed in my life and has done for me.
And if I could interject here, I'm gonna do a little plug, because we've really been, as a leadership team for the youth, we've been wrestling with this. We've actually seen growth, which is really great. But at some point you start to realize, like, hey, there's no way that we can disciple all these kids individually.
Yep.
And so there are people within our body who don't have kids in the home anymore, or people who are young enough that they haven't had kids yet, right? And those are two great groups of people who can take on those new Timothys and really love and care for and raise up. Because we had 39 kids last night, and there's 7 of us last night. So this is a great way. They're not a part of our body later. They're part of our body now.
Yeah.
And so I encourage people, if they're not really sure, but they feel the call to help raise up the next generation, that's a great place to start getting plugged in.
Yeah, it's cool. When you see that everyone is worth discipling, and you're willing to say, hey, listen, I don't know if this is a good idea, but I'm going to do it anyways because God calls me to do it. I served in a ministry as a youth pastor years ago, and I came in, and there was a large influx of 6th graders. And like huge amount. Like I came in and the ministry started like 12 kids, and God just grew it and grew it and grew it. And so I was blessed to be part of probably the like growth of that, the watering and the growing of that ministry. And so I was very intentional about those 6th graders and saying, how can I help mature them and grow them? And not that we left out other kids, but, focus on that very large group, because they were there weren't many other kids in the youth ministry at all. It was like all of these new kids that were just excited, and not all of them were part of the church. And so by 8th grade, 8 of those students were running our small groups on a Wednesday night. So I would teach a lesson and give questions to those 8 students, and they would go off into the rooms with their little small groups, and they would lead questions with their small groups. And they became in high school great leaders, and they went on all of our trips and all of our ministry things. And so it was the idea of like when I tell people that, they're like, you let 8th graders lead your small groups. And I was like, yeah, actually one of them was a 7th grader, I believe, because he was just so phenomenally connected to the Lord, really, really wise, very gentle. And, but it was this idea of like, so they would actually show up, like an hour before Wednesday night started. And we would have like training for them, not about like, hey, this is how you're going to teach your small group today, but we would have specific training about what it means for them to be discipled and walk with Jesus. And some of our high schools joined us on that time too, because they were growing. That was our discipleship, core team.
Yeah.
And a lot of people were like, man, how do you get like kids to do that? Well, you just invite them in. Like you say, hey, we want to do this. Who's interested? And as you go, you'll find the kids that you can push farther, the kids that maybe need more focus in areas. And I think what happens often is we don't think, oh, this can happen. And you're like, well, my answer is, man, do you trust God? Like, let God lead this. Like, if God is moving you as a person to say, I'm supposed to disciple someone, and I think it's this person, keep praying about it and go do that. Like, God will tell you whether or not that's the right thing, or he'll lead you in that. And so I think it's encouraging to say we all need to be part of this. So you need a Paul, and you need a Timothy, and that's the reality of how we kind of do this in a nutshell. And so I think discipleship is the measure of the health of your church.
Yeah, that's good.
So we often go, okay, how many members do you have, and what's your budget?
Yeah,
that's the like, and I like to say that's the worldly way to look. That's not. That's literally like the church's way of measuring. I measure it typically in baptisms and commitments to say I'm going to go deeper in this area.
Yeah.
How many people have been baptized? That would be a question of growth to me. How many more people are involved in discipleship? Like, how many people are strengthening their commitment to? And it's not even like how many people are involved in ministries within your church, because I think that's an important piece. But you have times where like one ministry just has less people, and you're like, well, that's not. I don't think the ministry's failing because of that.
Sure.
I think God's probably refining and preparing maybe the leadership to lead that better, or preparing the right people to be in that ministry, or and even in a harsh way to say it, cleaning out people that maybe God doesn't want there anymore. I think that's a hard realization that often happens, where God sifts the church, and we are uncomfortable with that.
Yeah.
But I think really discipleship is measured by the maturity, or the health of a church is measured by the maturity of its believers. And that's a reflection of how well you're discipling and being discipled. And so, it happens. Discipleship happens in community. I don't think you can do it without community, right?
Yeah.
You can't do it without community because you have to have 2 other people involved, right? You're Paul and you're Timothy. But you can't do it. You can do it outside the church, right? I actually went to, I don't remember if I was a junior or senior, but there was a guy who was involved in a different church, but he was like having a Bible study in his basement for high school students. And I was like, I want more Bible study. So I went to it. Like, I was like, I went to so much church when I was a teenager. And because I wanted God to just pour into me, I wanted to grow and learn. And because I didn't know anything. Yeah. I still hardly know all of what probably I should know. But God allowed me in those like formative years to really be discipled well. And it's helped me. And I think that's a right? That's a picture of the church as we talk about, okay, how does discipleship is the natural healthy pattern of the church. Like discipleship done well is within the community of the church. It's within the building up of the body. It's not, we don't consume the church, we become the church. We don't show up to be given and fed. We show up to help feed and help grow. Yes, we're here to glorify the Lord, right? That Sunday morning is about coming and gathering as the body to glorify the Lord. And it helps disciple our neighbors, right? You want simple discipleship? Show up to church and worship well.
Yeah.
Sing the songs, pray the prayers. And I don't say that like nonchalantly, like just do it. Like I say that as be intentional about being with the Lord in those moments.
Right.
If you're a takes notes person during the service, like during the sermon, like take notes and use those notes to help. If you're a take notes person because you're forgetful, also a good thing. Like I often will be like, someone will come up to me and be like, hey, last week in the sermon you said this, and I was like, you have to clarify. I don't always know what I say. Like I don't know. I know in the moment what I'm talking about, but I don't always remember all of the things that I say during the service.
And to be fair, even for people who think they're not notes people, right? Like I don't remember what's on my calendar most of the time, but if I write it down, physically write it down, not type it into my digital calendar.
Yeah.
If I write it down, I almost always remember it, right?
Yes.
And so, of course, you're not going to remember 40 minutes of material, but if you're taking those notes, you're more likely to remember the important things.
Yeah, it's a helpful tool. It's actually like there's scientific evidence for actually physically writing it down, which is really important. So, and I'll give an interesting point to this. I used to go into Word and have Word dictate my sermons because it was helpful for me to like. I'm a much better verbal presenter than I am a written presenter. Like I have to spend a lot of time writing and adjusting writing and asking other people to edit my writing. And so I actually did that for several years. I would just go into Word, I have a dictate, and then I would go in and edit it, and then I probably a few months into coming here, I got a new technology, right, where I actually write my sermons out like physically on this pad, which I actually use every Sunday morning.
Yeah. And
sometimes it's bad because I can't read my own handwriting. And so I'll glance down to look at a note and I'll be like, I don't know what that says. But it really has helped me to know better what I like I underline things that are like really, really important.
Yeah.
And I'll make sure I write out very detailed, specific. Most of what's on there is like bullet points.
Yeah.
But if I want to say a very specific sentence or whatever, I will write it out very clearly and make sure that I can actually read that.
Yeah.
But there's a memory thing to that. I have to use my notes way less than I used to because I think I just remember those better. And it's not about it's not about everything I'm saying is important because I don't think that's true. I think God is speaking and you're writing down more of what God is saying to you than it is about exactly the words that are coming out of my mouth. Yeah. My prayer is that they are God's words. I will say this, and this is kind of something important. When discipleship becomes the central tenet of our hearts in the church, evangelism becomes natural because we are called to reproduce. That's the go make disciples.
Yeah.
And so that becomes a natural product of discipleship. Like you're so excited about all the things that are going on in your life that God is doing, and you're like, I just want to share this with someone else.
Yeah.
And that's evangelism.
Yeah.
I'm really, really excited about the things that Jesus is doing. Like, let me tell you about that. That's it, right? God blessed me with this. Share that. That's evangelism, right? Yeah. And so I think it's just a natural product of the church as we do discipleship well. Because what is discipleship? It's imitating Christ, growing deeper with God. As we do that really, really well, then we have the opportunity to do the other pieces much significantly easier, right? Jesus sent the disciples out, and they learned from him. He sent them. He went with them. They learned from him. He sent them. He didn't go with them. He came back and talked to them. Then he sent them for good, right? And then what happened? You get in Acts, the church explodes because those disciples trusted in the Lord and went and did what he called them to do. And so I that is the discipleship that's what it is, right? That is part of our mission statement. Our message is Jesus. Our method is discipleship, right? So we are going to be, or we need to be, a people who are all about being imitators of Jesus and reflecting that to other people around us, and being willing to humble ourselves to receive that from others. And when we can do that, I think the impact we have for the kingdom becomes so much more powerful.
You just made me think. One of our elders had a relative pass away this past week. My wife had the opportunity to serve her over the last couple of years. And so as we were kind of reflecting on that after it happened, she started to give witness to all the beautiful things that she saw over the years, right? I think we often think that we hit a certain place and the Lord can't use us anymore. There's not much left for us. We'll just kind of be here until we're done. And it was really beautiful to get to hear these stories about how she continually was engaging people with Christ through stories, through laughter, through care for other people, and all these beautiful things. And so I hope that, as I reflect on her and the stories my wife has told me, that can be our story too, that we pass on the truth of the gospel to one another in love, in laughter, in care.
Yeah, right. It's that natural part of being a disciple that reflects our everyday life, becomes a reflection of Jesus because we're imitating him. So this is actually I don't know if I've ever said this here, but this is the thing I always told. Do you remember those commercials? Oh man, probably 90s. A tombstone, and their commercial, their like punchline was like, "What do you want on your tombstone?"
Yes.
I mean, this is a random thought. So like, it was always I always had this thought. Like, I think it was in college. I like constantly had this thought, and it's always stuck with me. It was like, Stephen, what like legacy do you want to leave behind, kind of thing. What do you want people to know you for? And the only picture I've ever had in my mind is that when Moses comes down the mountain and no one can look at him because his face is shining so brightly, not because of him, but because he spent time in the presence of the God. And the holiness of God was so impactful. God's presence was so huge to him that he shined. And so when I think about like what I want on my tombstone is, he shined so brightly for Jesus that everyone could only see Jesus when they looked at Stephen.
Oh, man, yeah.
If we can become imitators of Christ in that manner, our life, no matter what point of life we are, will be a reflection of Christ and ultimately disciple those around us.
Yes.
And so that's what discipleship means. It means being so transformed by the power and grace of Jesus Christ that we look like him and all the world sees is Jesus. And so that if that can happen, and then we share that, right? We share that with others. And so that's the hope, right? That's the hope, and that we become lights to the world because of the transformative power of Jesus in our lives.
Yeah. As we get close to the end of this last episode for the season, you have a reminder here, and I want to read it out loud exactly how you have it written down. Discipleship is slow, it's personal, and lifelong, but it's how Jesus transforms the world. I think when we make it a checklist of things to do, when we make it, so I came back to the church, and then I was under a pastor who had really great intentions, and he was kind of in that model of, like you're talking about, like, this year you're going to disciple 4 people, and then next year those 4 people are going to start to disciple people. And the problem is we're not done.
It would be great if it worked like that, but that's not.
But I love this reminder. It's slow, it's personal, and it's lifelong. And both of us have lived in a bunch of other places. And I'm sure we've kept in touch with a couple of those people in each of those places. But after time, that they've moved on to new discipleship opportunities, both up and down. And so we start new, slow personal relationships until the Lord either takes us away or we hit the end.
Yeah. It's interesting, like, when we talk about lifelong, like, right, that's lifelong for us personally in our growth and imitation of Christ.
Yeah.
It's the slow process of it takes time for people to feel comfortable about being led by you or you being led by someone else. And we wish it wouldn't, right? If you think I did this in high school, I'll give this is the best example I can think of. I worked out a lot in high school. I was really in shape, played lots of sports. And I remember going to the gym, and I worked out probably like 3 or 4 days a week. And I remember going to the gym, and then, I can't remember. I think he called it up and down the river. And this guy was like, "Hey, do you want to do up and down the river with me?" And I was like, I don't know what that is, but sure. Like, and it was curling. And it was only like 35, 40 pounds for 2 hands, which I could curl in high school like 50 pounds with 1 hand. So sure. I was like, oh, but you started at 1. You did 1 curl, you passed the bar to your partner, they did 1. But you went up to 10 and then back down to 1. And so in my brain, like, I was like, I can easily do this. And by the time I set that thing down, like, both of my arms were like dead. Like, I was like, I had trouble driving home. Yeah. Because my arms were like, I can't move my arms. And that's not something you jump into. Like, if I had any idea, I had no idea. I was like 35 pounds and curl that with 1 hand. That's not a big deal. But that many times I was not prepared for, because it's 1 and then 2 and then 3 and I was like, that hurt. Like, it really, really hurt. Now, could I have, after that, more training, done that? Of course, right? It's that process.
Yeah.
Sometimes God gives you everything in that moment, and sometimes it's a process. Yeah. And so I think that we have to be accepting of both of those things. There are some people that will become new Christians tomorrow that will blow you away with their faith. Yeah. And you'll be like, why am I not like them? Because you're in a different process than they are. Yeah. It might be that you haven't surrendered fully. I'm not. Yeah. Maybe that's a question you ask the Lord. Yeah. But it might just be your process is different than theirs, and that's okay. So, yeah, discipleship is a lifelong process. Lifelong. It's till the end. Well done and good, faithful servant doesn't come until we're done. Yeah. And we're not done until Christ calls us home.
I love it. We'll close this out. The church doesn't have a discipleship program. It is the discipleship program. And that's a great way to wrap up this series. It wasn't super long, but really hopefully impactful for the people who had a chance to kind of listen through these conversations, just kind of digest all the scripture that we walked through to talk about them. But if you know someone who needs to go back and listen, we start with what is the church? What to look for in a church. You might know people that are outside of our area that are trying to figure out, where do I go? What do I do? What should I get involved with? How do I do that? And so you can go back. What is the church? What to look for in a church? What is church membership? Why serve? And the thing that undergirds all those things is discipleship as our core calling. And so we're so thankful that you've joined us on this journey through, what is the church? We don't know what's next, but we hope you'll join us as we wrap up this season 3 of the Mixing Bowl podcast, and we hope to see you soon. Bye.
Play sweet elevator music.